Welcome to the Criminal Imagination. This series is not a tale of logic and reason. It is a descent into shadows, secrets, and the crimes that refuse to die. We will uncover the forgotten roots of crime fiction, haunted mansions, unreliable confessions, spectral witnesses, and guilty minds fractured by mirrors and blood. And through this, we will explore how fear, guilt, madness, and supernatural shaped the genre we believed we understood. This is the archive of the repressed. Welcome to Gothic Evidence Dark Inheritance, a world where justice limps behind secrets, where madness wears a velvet coat, and the blood on the floor tells stories older than law or even time. Let me take you away from the neon lit alleys and fogged gaslight streets where crime fiction is usually imagined. Let's go to rural noir and agrarian horror. Today, we turn our gaze to the countryside, the rolling fields, the isolated cottages, the marshy bogs and whispering hedgerows that seem so deceptively calm. It is in these spaces that what I'll call agrarian horror blooms like poisonous flowers. This is the Gothic reimagined of isolation, silence, superstition, and the crimes no city inspector will ever investigate. Urban crime fiction prides itself on rational detectives, police reports, and evidence. But in the countryside, justice becomes a spectral thing. The law is far away. The land itself feels older than any courthouse. And the crimes that unfold are steeped in traditions, curses, and long buried feuds. The Gothic thrives here, where silence is more terrifying than screams, and where what is hidden in the soil is never entirely dead. Two novels illuminate this haunted landscape for us. First, Edna O'Brien's The Little Red Chairs, which is set in rural Ireland, and Hannah Kent's The Good People, which is set in 19th century Australia. Different hemispheres, different centuries, but both reveal how superstition, remoteness, and collective silence shape crime into something ritualistic, spectral, and disturbingly intimate. Let's talk about The Little Red Chairs. O'Brien, as always, writes with an almost sacramental lyricism, and The Little Red Chairs begins innocently enough. A stranger arrives in a small Irish town. He claims to be a healer, a mystic. The villagers, starved for novelty, for meaning, for something larger than the very repetition of rural life, welcome him. Fidelma, a woman caught in the monotony of her marriage, is drawn to him with a hunger that is both erotic and spiritual. She asks him for a child, but the stranger is not a mystic. He is wanted for crimes against humanity. He is a war criminal, a butcher hiding in plain sight among sheep pastures and stone cottages. O'Brien stages one of the most horrifying dissonances in modern literature: how the pastoral can shelter atrocity, how the green fields of Ireland can become complicit in global blood crimes. And here we see a Gothic pattern emerge. In rural Noir, the village becomes the haunted mansion. It is closed, claustrophobic, full of corridors and whispers. Outsiders disrupt its fragile peace, but often the most frightening revelation is that the evil was never truly outside. The soil remembers violence. O'Brien writes, "The past comes to haunt us, to defile us, and the wound is a red chair." The little red chairs of the title refer to a real act of commemoration in Sarajevo. 11,541 red chairs placed in rows, one for each person killed in the siege. Rural Ireland, untouched by bombs, becomes haunted by them nonetheless. Silence is not innocence. The countryside is not safe. The Gothic thrives on this collapse of boundaries where the pastoral and the violent, the intimate and the political merge into one nightmare. And then we go to Hannah Kent's The Good People. This book takes us further back to 19th century rural Ireland. Though the novel itself was published in Australia, it is a story of Noir, an old widow whose daughter has died, leaving her with a sickly grandson. The child, convulsing, weak, strange, is believed to be a changeling, one of the good people, the fairies. The villagers whisper. They see misfortune in every shadow, and the Gothic here is not imported from the city, it is local. It is woven into the soil, into the rituals, into the herbal cures and the strange dances at crossroads. Nora seeks help from a healer woman, Nance Roche, who insists that the boy is not truly human, that the fairies have stolen him away. Kent, like O'Brien, forces us to watch how silence and superstition deform justice. A crime is committed, but who is guilty? Is it the grandmother who believes? Is it the healer who prescribes? Or is it the collective weight of the village itself, which refuses to intervene, complicit in a slow, ritualized murder disguised as cure? Kent's prose lingers on the countryside, the bogs, the river, the hills that seem always to hide something. She writes, the valley kept its silence, a hush that was thick, as if the very air resisted speech. That silence is a crime, that hush is a murder. When we place O'Brien and Kent side by side, the motives become disturbingly clear. Rural noir is defined not by explicit gore, but by atmosphere of belief, by the tyranny of superstition, by what everyone knows but no one names. In the little red chairs, the crime is global genocide hiding in a parochial parish. In the good people, the crime is local, folkloric, woven into fairy faith. But in both cases, the countryside isolates victims. The law cannot or will not reach them. Silence is stronger than testimony. Tradition is stronger than fact. This is the agrarian horror, not ghosts rattling chains, but neighbors refusing to speak, not demons with horns, but fields that watch as a child wastes away. The countryside is fertile ground for Gothic crime because it is both timeless and decaying. Old beliefs persist, old crimes repeat, and isolation ensures that when something horrific happens, it is absorbed into the soil rather than written into the record. One might ask, why does rural noir feel so terrifying to us today, when we live in an age of surveillance cameras, instant communication, global police cooperation? Precisely because the countryside resists that modern net. It remains liminal, resistant to reason, governed by unwritten codes and whispered suspicions. O'Brien's war criminal thrives because no one in the Irish town can imagine such atrocity in their midst. Kent's healer thrives because no one in the village dares call her superstition cruelty. Silence breeds complicity. There is also a political dimension. Rural noir interrogates the myth of the countryside as innocent. Nationalism often romanticizes the land, the soil, the peasantry, but literature reminds us that the soil is soaked in blood, that the village is as corruptible as the metropolis, that innocence is a mask. The Gothic, then, is not merely aesthetic here, it is critique. It shows us that nostalgia for a simpler rural life conceals horror, the suppression of women, the persecution of the different, the silencing of victims, the burial of atrocity in plain sight. The psychological dimension of rural noir is equally Gothic. In the city, paranoia manifests as surveillance, cameras, detectives, newspaper. In the countryside, paranoia manifests as superstition, curses, fairies, ghosts. Fidelma, in the little red chairs, becomes both victim and accomplice, seduced by the stranger but blinded to his monstrosity. Nora, in the good people, becomes both desperate grandmother and executioner. Their guilt is intimate, domestic, woven into love itself. The Gothic delights in this confusion. Crime is not only in the deed, but in the silence, the wish, the dream. The landscape itself reflects this psychological torment. O'Brien's pastoral Ireland is not lush but suffocating. Kent's valleys are not picturesque but oppressive. Every hedge, every bog, every stone cottage feels like a witness. The natural world becomes a spectral jury, silently condemning or silently conspiring. If we take seriously the idea that crime fiction is a mirror of civilization, then rural noir is a mirror of what civilization represses. It reminds us that the countryside is not merely a backdrop for nostalgic postcards, but a stage for crime shaped by isolation, silence, and belief. Urban crime fiction can end with trials, sentences, punishments. Rural noir often ends with silence, graves, and rituals. Justice is deferred, the crime remains unsolved, or worse, unspoken. This is why these texts matter. O'Brien's novel confronts the complicity of the seemingly innocent in global atrocity. Kent's novel confronts the cruelty hidden inside tradition. Both remind us that literature must look not only at the shining cities, but also at the shadows in the fields. So, when we speak of Gothic crime fiction, we must not limit ourselves to castles and asylums. The true Gothic thrives just as easily in a valley, in a bog, in a stone cottage, where silence becomes deadly. Edna O'Brien and Hannah Kent teach us that the countryside is not innocent. It is haunted, haunted by wars it never fought, by fairies that never existed, by crimes that everyone knew and no one named. And perhaps that is the real terror of rural noir, that evil does not always arrive as a monster. Sometimes it comes as a healer, a neighbor, a grandmother. Sometimes the darkest crimes bloom not only in cities, but in the quiet of the countryside. So I leave you with the question: when we think of crime, do we think too much of the city and too little of the countryside? What terrors remain unspoken in the silence of the fields? And as we close this descent into rural Gothic, remember, silence is not innocence, and every landscape hides a grave. Until next time, beware the quiet places, for in the stillness, crimes wait to be remembered. This has been the Criminal Imagination.